love that intro. I love that intro. Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show Expresso on SABC3 on this Thursday morning, and it's baby talk time, as you can tell. Now, of course, we all know, I think, parenting is a privilege, but man, is it a challenge, as I've encountered in the past week.
You're a freshie, dude. You're a freshie.
I'm still fresh in the game. But I guess the big question we're trying to answer today is how to go about raising healthy and happy children, because we know that, like old school parenting goes, they've got to be well disciplined, they've got to be well mannered, but they've got to be happy. And how exactly you define that? That's why we've got Lizanne Du Plessis joining us. She is a Paediatric Occupational Therapist, a speaker and author of Raising Happy Children, to help us get some top tips. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Oh, thank you. It's lovely to be here with the new dad, experienced dad.
And it still feels fresh. I wouldn't say I'm experienced, man. We're just trying to find our way. But thank you for your efforts in this area as well, because as parents, you need every little bit of help you can get. But let's start at the beginning, I suppose, and we'd love to hear from you guys as well. 021-430-9881. If you've got an opinion, maybe you've got the happiest child on earth, maybe you've got a question.
Tell us how.
Yeah, man, please share that information. But how would you define, Lizanne, a happy child?
Yeah, I think that's one of the questions that, as parents, that is what we want for our children. If you ask any parent, what's your biggest wish for your child? It's often for them to be happy and to be healthy. But, we know that happiness is a difficult thing to...
Subjective,
It's very, and is it a feeling? Is it an emotion, or is it a thought? And what's wonderful to know about happiness is that some of it is genetically there. We know that some of our parents might just be happy. Somebody was saying now, we just tell your child a few happy jokes. And so you might have that dad who really creates that environment at home where it's filled with laughter and happiness. I can see that there's one that's maybe practicing in that area. But we also know that, that the brain can change, and that science tells us that children who are really happy have got an ability which we call self-regulation. That ability to regulate what they feel in their bodies, what they feel, their emotions, and their thoughts. And they do say that self-regulation is one of the most important life skills that children should have. So, in my opinion, it's that ability to be calm and connected and to be self-regulated. So we can explore that a bit today. Yes.
For adults as well.
Absolutely, So your book, Raising Happy Children, covers a myriad of topics and gives new parents advice and understanding of raising happy children. So what kind of topics are you covering in this book?
First of all, I talk a lot about the brain and how the brain develops, because I think we need to understand that although your little baby might present to you just like, we are, they look the same, their brains are still very much under construction, which means that affects the way that they behave. So if we can get a little glimpse of an understanding of how brains develop, that's something I talk in the book, and how that affects behavior. And then another aspect that also affects behavior is our ability, or our unique sensory temperaments. As an occupational therapist, that's one area that we specialize in, which we call sensory integration or sensory processing, and that's part of your temperament. So your ability to take in information from the world and make sense of it. And we all have a unique sensory temperament. Some of us has got what we call a low threshold. So we could explain it in the sense that you've got a small cup when it comes to input from visual or from your auditory system or your movement system. And I often speak about those children being hedgehogs. They could be quite prickly on the side, and then when they reach their cup, when they've got so much information that fills up their cup, they might come to a point where they either curl up into a ball and avoid the situation, or they might put out that prickles and they could get quite offensive. On the other hand, we also get people that's got a big cup, and they are the easy babies. They fall into sleep routines easily. If we've got them as our first children, we feel, ka-ching, I'm a wonderful parent. and often...
That's my boy!
And often, in all honesty, it might not have everything to do with you, but the child's unique temperament. So that's the hedgehogs. They can take quite a lot of sensory input. So I talk about the unique sensory temperaments, how parents understand what type of child do they have? Because I think it's so important that we come from a place where we try and figure out what our child is trying to tell us. What is their unique temperament style that they were born with? So then, and I give them tips on how we can discipline those children, how we can love them, and how we can connect to them. Because we know when we foster the parent-child relationship, that's when brain development really happens.
Sure. I think we always have this, and first of all, I feel like I'm completely winning as a dad, but I'm beginning to understand more and more that I've just got an amazing child. I think is a big part of that. But let's talk about that thing. We often look at children with this condescending nature that we have big adult grown-up feelings and they have little children feelings, but they feel it. And we have those big feelings. So I'm going to ask you to just think about that, how we help our child deal with those big feelings when we struggle to wrap our heads around them. How do we get them to deal with those big moments? Because it's going to happen, and we want them to be able to be prepared. But we'd love to hear from you guys as well. 021 430 9881. We are talking about happy children. How do we foster those connections and create a happy child?
NutriKids, good for mom, way better for kids. Made with love by Clover.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Oh, I love it.
You can't get over that.
I love it. It's a short circuit.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. It is baby talk time. Lizanne Du Plessis joins us, and we're talking about raising happy children. We've got Ermi on the line from Johannesburg. Good morning, Ermi.
Good morning.
Thanks so much for the call. What is your question?
Okay, well, my comment on this is parents have a history of raising their kids with a blaming and shaming way of raising children, and also using older siblings to bully younger siblings into submission to make the disciplining of those children easier. They use words like stupid, useless. I was often called a stupid fool kid. I was called a horrible, a pest, a clot, and this sort of language. And I come from a decent family that didn't drink, smoke, do drugs, lie, cheat, steal, gamble, or sleep around. A decent, respectable family. And I grew up a rebel. I've never succeeded at very much. And I'm at odds still with him to this day. I didn't go to my mother's funeral, and I have no contact with my older sister whatsoever.
Thank you for sharing that.
I
with
love
us,
that.
Ermi.
I mean,
so when we talk about the words,
down,
I mean, that was right down to how you speak to your children and the effect that that has on
Would
the
you say
kind
that's
of
the norm
language.
now within today's parenting model? As you said, that didn't come from a bad family, but that was just the norm. Has that changed?
You know what, I couldn't hear exactly every word that he was saying, but I think what we need to understand with all these parenting things is what we do as parents and who we are often means so much more than what we say to our kids. So yes, kids learn from example. If there's bad words that goes around, if they hear it at school, they're going to come and try it at home. But then that's where we as parents need to be, that place of safety, that place where they can come and test the boundaries and say, if I hear a word at school or somewhere and I'm going to try it on my dad, what's my dad going to say about that? And they also learn from what we say to them and how we are. So it's so important that we understand that our children look at it all the time. There's mirror neurons in our brain. That means that they mirror what they do, what they see, we do. So it's so important that we...
I just want to touch on something before we carry on with the big feelings question, but what Ermi just said now, about what parents would say. Let's say there's an older sibling who happens to be a successful younger sibling, perhaps not so. And the comparison is then used. Why aren't you like your sister? Why aren't you like your brother who's so well behaved, who's this and that? How much damage could that do? Because when you listen to that story that we just heard now, it can be quite destructive.
Yes, of course it is, because the words that we say to our kids is going to become their inner voice. And children could be traumatized by the things that they hear is being said to them, because they're trying to make sense of who they are. And if that is the message that's been given to them, well, that could be something that definitely becomes part of them. So yes, we need to, that comes back to self-regulation. As adults, we need to regulate, even though you feel that, even though you can, you know, your bigger sister is the wonderful sister and your little one isn't doing the same, even though you might feel, you know, that you want to say that, we need to self-regulate and regulate those feelings and thoughts and not say that to kids.
Best journey of self-discovery you'll ever go on. You think it's about your child, but ultimately it's about learning yourself. And you have the opportunity to change and grow through that, which I think is the most beautiful thing. I mean, no amount of discipline worked on me. When I think about it, it was actually the emotional pressure points. If my mom was upset and I could feel that she was actually hurt, I changed, the behavior would happen. Not always stay, but it would change. And I think that seems to be a big thing that's resonating with me. It's the emotional side of this. How do we help our child build those tools? Yes, it's great in retrospect. I can look back and say my mom was amazing and she helped me learn these lessons. How do we actively do that as a parent when they're young? Because I can see he is feeling deep emotions. He's only 14 months old, but I can feel the emotion. I can feel what he feels. How do we approach them feeling those big feelings and managing that?
Yes, I love the word big feelings, because what we deal with here is children whose brains are still under construction. Dan Siegel presents it beautifully, and he talks about the brain being a double-story house, and the top story is where our thinking brain is, and where we can have logical thinking, decision-making, problem-solving skills. It's those higher cognitive skills that comes from the thinking brain. And then in the bottom story of this house is where our emotional and primitive part of the brain is situated. That's where we process sensations and emotions. And we know with our children, until mid-20s, those top story of the brain is still developing. So big emotions like frustration, anger, shame, guilt, all those feelings tend to then put the top story of the brain, shut it down a little bit, and then the emotional part of the brain is in the driving seat. So that's why if you tell your little toddler, no, you can't have another yogurt, they can't necessarily use the thinking skills and think, okay, I've had one already, maybe I can have another one tomorrow. To them, that is frustration, that is anger, that's disappointment. I want that now. And that's where that big emotions tend to then overtake behavior and then becomes the behavior and becomes the child. So as parents, we need to understand that that's where it's coming from. And that helps us to then guide them and help them to make sense of that emotion.
Should we be explaining it?
Yeah, because then immediate reaction is, let's say it happens in a store, holding pa, that's what would have happened in the past. What do you do then? Do you sit down and have an intellectual conversation with them? What do you do?
You start very young by naming emotions. First of all, coming from the place where we don't put a lid on emotions. Again, in the past, that was something, you know, children are...
especially men.
Children are seen and, you know, not heard necessarily. We didn't necessarily acknowledge emotions, especially that negative emotions like frustration and anger. I think it's important that as parents, we try and create an environment where we say to the children, it's okay to feel frustration. It's okay to feel anger. It's okay to feel shame and guilt. It's what we do with those emotions that's important. So we start off very young and we say, I can see that you're angry. Mommy can understand that you're sad because your tower, your Lego just broke. So first of all, we try and give it a name. And then we can use different mediums. We can use storytelling. We can, you know, look at the picture books that they love, and we can speak through the characters and say, what do you think that character is feeling now? So as children grow and develop, we start naming the emotions, and when we can name them, then we can help them to tame it. We can help them to...
Can we take you home with us?
Yes, please. Just in my pocket.
All week.
In that book, Raising Happy Children.
I would love
Thank you so
to
much,
come
Lizanne,
home
for
with
joining
you.
us.
That
Unfortunately, we've run out of time.
wonderful.
There's
Thank
so much
you.
more that we could learn from you, and I hope we'll have you back for many, many more Baby Talk segments to come, and hopefully we've shared some valuable information with you. Thank you very much for sharing your stories with us.
NutriKids, good for mom, way better for kids. Made with love by Clover.